Okay, so this video is here to explain the 16th nakshatra out of the 27 nakshatras known as Vishaka, which falls in between 20 degrees of Libra all the way to 3.20 degrees of Scorpio. This is a nakshatra that is ruled by the deity known as Agni, and the sexual animal associated with this is a male tiger, and the planet that rules and controls this nakshatra is Jupiter. And the symbolism for this nakshatra is an arch. It's pillars. It's an archway. And yeah, let's get into it. First, let's start off by talking about the deity. There's two interpretations of this deity. From what I've researched and looked up, this deity is, not considered to be viewed as two separate deities being fused together as one. Because you see this name, Agni, has the name of Indra, who is a deity, and it has Agni, who is a deity. So there's many interpretations who believe this nakshatra is the fusion of these two gods becoming one. And then there is another interpretation with this nakshatra that Agni is his own person, is his own identity, because the name Indra is not just the name and title of a person, but it is also it's not just a name and title of a person. It's not just name of a person, but it's a title of a person. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm stumbling over my words. Because Indra, the actual deity, is known as the king and ruler of heaven and of the gods and of the devas. And Indra is just associated with, being like the best, being like a king. So when you put the prefix Indra in front of Agni having to deal with fire, this shows that this is like the best type of fire. The best type of fire to get things done, to manifest and do things. And it's stated that Androgny's purpose is to, help give Lord Brahma divine intelligence by worshiping Vishnu. And so yeah, that's basically all that I know in regards to Androgny when it comes to Androgny being considered and viewed as a single entity. But when I go and view this deity as two deities coming together as one, I can tell you a whole lot. But I feel as though no matter how you slice it, you'll get similar answers and definitions when it comes to the characteristics and traits of this nakshatra. So what could you say about Androgny, with it being the fusion, considered the fusion of Agni and Indra? Well, Agni is fire and Indra is the rain god. So you got fire and essentially water coming together, which can create and produce a whole lot of life. So this is a very, I don't want to say this is a fruitful nakshatra, because it's not a nourishing nakshatra. This is a nakshatra that allows you to manifest and bring things into fruition, into reality, by like your own efforts and through like fire and rituals and stuff. But let me show you why this is very fruitful nakshatra, with Agni the Fire God and Indra the Rain God coming together. Because there's another nakshatra that's very similar to this. So think about Kritika Nakshatra. Kritika Nakshatra is the third nakshatra and is ruled by Agni. It's a fiery nakshatra. Falls in between Aries and Taurus. And then you have Rohini. And then after Rohini got Mrigashira. But what is Mrigashira ruled by? Mrigashira is ruled by the moon spirit. And the moon deity is just, it's the energy of the graha, the moon. And the moon is considered just to be this watery planetary body. So you got Kritika, who's fire, ruled by Agni in the third nakshatra. And you have Mrigashira, who is ruled by Soma, Chandra, the moon spirit, who is very watery and soft, in the fifth nakshatra. And who is sitting in between the third and the fifth nakshatra? It's the fourth nakshatra, which is Rohini, which is known and considered to be either like the most fruitful and nurturing, and just the very most fruitful and best nakshatra to start almost any activity when it comes to doing things. It's just considered to be a very fruitful and prosperous nakshatra when it comes to doing things. So when we see that nature of fire and water coming together, and Rohini sits in between these two nakshatras, we can sort of apply those same traits and characteristics to Vishaka nakshatra, that you have fire and rain coming together. So this can produce very fruitful things in a different form and manner. And let's pay attention to the planet that rules and controls this nakshatra. It's Jupiter. Who is the deity that represents Jupiter? It is Brihaspati. What nakshatra does Brihaspati rule? He rules Pushya. And what is Pushya considered to be? It's right up there with Rohini nakshatra. It's considered maybe to be the second best nakshatra in general when it comes to starting activities for positive, fast, quick results. And how was Brihaspati born? He was born from his father, who did offerings to Agni to have an intelligent son. And what is Brihaspati's role in Pushya nakshatra? His role is to nurture people, is to nurture the masses, is to nurture the collective. But he nurtures them with his intelligence. He nurtures people by performing rituals and fire rituals, and manifesting stuff. This is how he nurtures people. He nurtures people with intelligence and by doing rituals. And we see that that planet, Jupiter, rules and controls Vishaka. So you got to add all these pieces of the elements together. And what do we know another thing about Brihaspati, Jupiter? He, for a brief period of time, he was Indra, the actual deity. Indra. He was his guru. He was his teacher for a period of time, because Indra needed help. He needed guidance. He got the position of the king of the heavens, the king of the deities, the devas, by unethical and slick sort of conniving ways. And he needed a lot of help to run this new position, because the person who he took it from, Varuna, he was able to run multiple things by himself. But Indra, he needs a lot of help and outside assistance, and he needed Guru Brihaspati, Jupiter's assistance. But he ended up losing Brihaspati and Jupiter. Jupiter ends up leaving him because Indra ends up disrespecting Brihaspati. He ends up disrespecting Indra. Indra ends up disrespecting Jupiter. Brihaspati neglects him or whatever, doesn't acknowledge him, and Brihaspati runs away from him. So when I add all these elements together, I see that in this nakshatra, we see that Jupiter, Brihaspati, is in this nakshatra guiding Indra, and he's using the spiritual fires of Agni in order to manifest things, in order to bring things into fruition. He is guiding this king who needs guidance and teaching him, things to properly rule his dimension, properly rule his realm. And he's using occultic, methods and ways to go about bringing things into fruition. Agni is a deity, a fire deity, who was cursed with lust. He was cursed with lust for flirting with like a sage or a guru's wife. And he was also cursed again, I believe, for just spying on a woman who was married or whatever. Indra, he lusted after another sage or a guru's wife, and he transformed his appearance into that wife's husband, and he had sex with her. The husband found out, and he cursed Indra to have 1,000 vaginas all over his body. Then eventually those 1,000 vaginas were transformed to 1,000 eyes. So we see that because of Indra and Agni, people who have prominent planets in Vishaka, they can be very sexual, very lustful, and can spy on people and they can stalk. They can spy, stalk, and be very lustful. This is one of the things that you'll see with the Vishaka natives. Another thing with Vishaka people is that they could potentially be very insecure, because Indra was a deity who was very insecure about someone taking his position of power and knocking him from his throne the same way that he did the person who previously ruled his position. And he is someone who is sort of willing to do whatever it takes and stoop to underhanded methods in order to secure his position of power. So you can see traits like that manifest within this nakshatra. This is a very goal-driven nakshatra where this nakshatra symbolizes bringing two distinct things together. Bringing two things together in order to achieve success and victory. You know, think about an arch, which is one of the many symbols associated with this nakshatra. I like to think of, like, you know, one of the examples I like to think of is a wedding arch. You know, some people, they get married and there just be like this arch or like a pillar, where the couple hold hands and they say their vows and they kiss and stuff. It almost like a victory wreath. But with this example, it just highlights that Vishaka, they are willing to bring two people together, two things together, work with someone briefly in order to accomplish a task, in order to achieve victory. You know, just like a wedding, just like a marriage. You bring two people together, they marry, and it feels like they just completed something, like they just beat the end of a video game. But the video game isn't over. The real journey is beginning. So how do I translate that into this nakshatra? This is a very thirsty nakshatra. Agni, the fire god, he is someone, aside from insatiable sexual lust and desires, he is someone who just is a very, you know, thirsty, insatiable appetite deity. He's fire. Fire consumes everything. Fire burns and consumes everything. You know, Agni is a deity who is invoked in fire rituals, and you know, throw things into the fire and stuff. Agni is depicted with like having like 7 tongues. So Agni's appetite is never satisfied. So a Vishaka native appetite is never satisfied. After they complete one goal, they'll want another and another and another goal. So these people, you know, they have high aims, high goals, they aim high. And another thing that's associated with like arches and tall buildings and pillars is like places of high positions of power, like in the government or just temples and stuff. Places of high positions of power with a bunch of big monuments and statues and arches. All of that is very Vishaka-like. These people, they're focused on their goal. They're focused on their task. And they can have high goals, high aims that they want to accomplish. And then after they accomplish one goal, they want to go for another. This is a very restless nakshatra, you know. They just can't, you know, they can't sit still. They are focused on always focused on the next task, the next objective and stuff. Since this nakshatra deals with two deities, and the name Vishaka sort of translates into like a branch or a fork or something to that nature, you can see a bit of maybe like a potential like themes of splits involving this nakshatra. Themes of stuff being split to get split apart, or maybe two things uniting that are different coming together. So you splitting and coming together is maybe some themes that you can see with this nakshatra. Like for example, you might see someone, if maybe their moon is in this nakshatra, or their ascendant lord is in this nakshatra, or if their rising, their ascendant is in this nakshatra, then they might have, I don't know, they might be fluid in gender. I mean, not fluid in gender, but, you know, in their sexual orientation, who they prefer to maybe identify as, or who they prefer to have sex with. It could be very fluid. It could be men or women. They might not. It might be very fluid. They might have like a split, distinct personality, two distinct personalities with them. And what else can I say about Vishaka natives? So let's talk about the sexual animal being a tiger. Now, the last few nakshatras I've always been talking about tigers and buffaloes, and their mythologies is very tied together. But that's because from Hasta, it's been nothing but that nature. Hasta is a female buffalo. Chitra is a female tiger. Swati is a male buffalo, and Vishaka is a male tiger. So the themes sort of, I'm getting real repetitive if you're following those nakshatra videos, but there's supposedly one story associated with this nakshatra because the symbolism, because the sexual animal is a tiger, of a sage who was a devotee of Shiva, and he would go and pick flowers in the forest barefooted, and he would end up wounding and damaging his head, rough feet due to him just walking barefooted. So he prayed to Shiva in order to be blessed with the feet of tigers, the feet of a tiger, and the wish was granted. So what does that show you? It shows you that these people have the willingness and drive to want to go out and venture into places that most people can't or won't be willing to go to. And what's another mythology associated with tigers? Goddess Durga is associated with tigers. She's associated with tigers and lions, but maybe more so with tigers. But she was a deity who was created from several deities and blessed with divine weapons from all these male gods to destroy and slay this powerful demon buffalo. And she did so riding on the back of a tiger. Tigers associated with Lord Ayappa, who is a deity who is the son of Lord Shiva and the son of Vishnu. But he's the son of Vishnu from one of Vishnu's many incarnations in different forms. Vishnu took the form of a woman and had sex with Shiva in order to produce a son that could defeat this other demon, this female buffalo that I mentioned, and in more detail in Swati Nakshatra. But Lord Ayappa, he ends up riding on the back of a tiger after his stepmother sends him away to his death to go get milk from a tigress. She was expecting him to die, but he ends up not dying and ends up riding on the back of the tigress with a whole bunch of cubs or a pack of other tigers following him. So Vishaka natives, they have the ability to achieve seemingly impossible tasks with their determination, with their drive, and with their ability and willingness to even resort to occultic methods and means to bring about their goals. They'll go and do occultic stuff, rituals and offerings and sacrifices, whatever you want to say, in order to achieve and accomplish their goal. An alternate name for this nakshatra is supposedly also stated to be Radha, or Radha. Yeah, I said it right, Radha, who is known to be the consort of Krishna, of the Krishna avatar. Who is Krishna and who is Radha? Krishna is stated to be the 8th incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and in that 8th incarnation, Vishnu's wife, who is Lakshmi, incarnated on earth as this woman known as Radha, and she loved and wanted to be married to Krishna, but they was never officially formally married, apparently. But the thing is, she really loved her husband in this human incarnation, and she was very loyal. She was very loyal and committed to him. And Krishna, who is this incarnation of Vishnu, is very spiritual and divine. So her love and devotion for Krishna was not just romantic, but it's also symbolic of a devotion for a divine love. And because one of the alternate names of this nakshatra is Radha, it is sort of stated that she might also be considered to be like a secondary deity that has influence and control over this nakshatra. And it's stated that this nakshatra forms a pair with the following nakshatra after this, who is known as Anu Radha. And you can see just from the name of the next nakshatra after this video, she'll have a heavy role to play. But we see that she sort of have an influence in this nakshatra. So by knowing that bit of information, we see that these people it just highlights further how Vishaka natives can be very driven and devoted, and they can develop a real spiritual love with things. If you have maybe your 10th lord in this nakshatra, and it's maybe in the or a planet in the 10th house in Vishaka in this nakshatra, it's possible that you might split from your job. There might come a time where you might split from your job, or you might work 2 jobs, or you might work 2 jobs, because this nakshatra is symbolism is like a fork, 2 things that break apart, or 2 things that break apart and come together. Think about like a literal fork. What is a literal fork? A literal fork that we use to eat stuff, right? The fork has spaces in it. They're broken up. The prongs are split up. And what do we do with those prongs that are split up? We use that fork to bring something together and eat and nourish you. So this nakshatra, just think of it like a literal fork. It takes 2 things that are separate and different, and it uses 2 things that are separate and different to take something else and bring it together and nourish you. That is what this nakshatra is about. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm not missing nothing. Look at my notes and stuff briefly before. But that's essentially it when it comes to Vishaka Nakshatra. I hope this video gave you great clarity and insight when it came to what to expect if you have Vishaka Nakshatra. But also I forgot, because people who watch this are gonna ask, what happens on the Libra side? What happens in the Scorpio side? And I be forgetting sometimes to mention what could happen when I get to the nakshatras that fall into 2 signs, especially for the people who are early and sort of new to learning nakshatras. They really want to know. For the most part, there don't be too much of a heavy distinct differences. In my opinion, when a nakshatra falls in between 2 signs, there is obviously a difference, because the signs are ruled by different planets. But the theme in general still is there. So in my opinion, from the Libra side would be the Libra side of the Vishaka. These people will be very goal-oriented and status-oriented, and just really focus on bringing people together in order to accomplish their task, accomplish their goal. And the Scorpio side of this nakshatra, they could potentially maybe bump heads with their teachers, bump heads with their gurus, because Indra did not get along with his teacher. And Indra has influence in this nakshatra. And the planet that rules and controls this nakshatra is Jupiter, who is the personification of Brihaspati, who was Indra's teacher. So on the Scorpio side, these people might clash with their teachers, or they might become very obsessive with obtaining occultic knowledge and information and wisdom to help them use that information and knowledge to achieve and accomplish and conquer their tasks and goals. And they could abuse and misuse the knowledge and information that they gather. And the reason that I said this is due to a technique that I learned from the KRS channel on how to view nakshatras. And I'm gonna try to make this simple, but if y'all don't understand it or get it, it doesn't matter. This is just be just extra rambling. So, okay. So how did I come up with the difference between the Libra and the Scorpio side? Make Libra the ascendant, right? And what is the planet that rules this nakshatra? Scorpio. I mean, the planet that rules this nakshatra is Jupiter, right? So, from a Libra ascendant, what house is Jupiter exalted in? Jupiter is exalted in the 10th house, which would be Cancer, right? And what house would Jupiter be debilitated in? It would be debilitated in the 4th house of Capricorn, which is why I said that the Libra side of this nakshatra, they would be very focused on accomplishing their task and uniting and working together with people, because from Libra ascendant, the nakshatra planetary lord becomes exalted in the 10th house. And what becomes the Mutrikone? The Mutrikone is Sagittarius, and Sagittarius falls in the 3rd house. What is a Mutrikone? A Mutrikone, or Mutrikona, one of the two, is a sign that a planet does very strong in, feels very comfortable in. Like, for example, Saturn's Mutrikone is Aquarius. It feels real more comfortable in Aquarius than it does Capricorn. Mars feels more comfortable in Aries than it does Scorpio. Jupiter feels more comfortable in Sagittarius than it does Pisces. So Jupiter's Mutrikone is Sagittarius from Libra ascendant, and Sagittarius falls in the 3rd house from a Libra ascendant. So I don't know. That's how you examine nakshatras. We see that the Jupiter would do very good and wanting to obtain status and goals and careers, and their efforts might be go to the 3rd house and stuff. I don't feel like completely breaking this stuff down. I'm just laying the blueprint out for y'all a little bit. From the Scorpio ascendant, Jupiter becomes exalted in the 9th house, which is teachers and gurus. And like I said, I know that Indra didn't get along well with his teacher, his guru. And the ascendant is Scorpio. Scorpio has that 8th house energy. Scorpio is ruled by Mars, and they like to dig deep and cut open things and get to the root and bottom of things. And 8th house, Scorpio is associated with like psychological things and stuff, so they can get very obsessive with wanting to find and uncover knowledge and information. And with Jupiter being debilitated in the 3rd house, because the 3rd house becomes Capricorn from a Scorpio ascendant, and the 3rd house naturally represents efforts, where we put our efforts to, and the things that we communicate, and our skills with our hands. The Scorpio natives, they could potentially be more likely to abuse and misuse knowledge and information to achieve goals and tasks. They might abuse their teachers and information or knowledge, or they might, communicate the wrong things, potentially more so from the Scorpio side. And that's all I gotta say about Vishaka Nakshatra. Hope this gave you answer and clarity on what happens if you have planets in Vishaka Nakshatra. Thank you for watching.